It's lunch and it's suddenly lunch on day 3 of the first test between India and the West Indies. We were looking at a lovely Ashwin and Rohit Sharma partnership, trying to put the numbers together for you as to whether this will be 200 for Rohit and maybe a 200 for Ashwin, and getting all that, and suddenly before we knew it, wickets fell, and here we are at match point. Hello and welcome. Sanjay Manjrekar is with me, and Sanjay, 219 ahead at lunch. India are all out. The West Indies have done well to at least dismiss it, but India will be very happy with this.
Yes, and if you look at the first innings score as an indication, you know, what West Indies got in the first inning, you would think that this is a match for India to wrap up very quickly. But I keep harping on the fact that there is the Chris Gale, Shivnarayan Chanderpaul, Samuel's factor in the opposition. And we've seen through the Indian batting innings as well, when a partnership develops, when two batsmen start playing well, suddenly the pitch looks easy, the bowling looks innocuous. So who knows, how the West Indies will respond. But we've seen one important thing, that West Indies cricket is changing. Now the spinners are their great strength. It took a while for Shillingford to go from 4 to 5. But again, the spinners are creating those early inroads there today.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other spinner as well, Veerasamy Permaul, picking up some wickets. We've been trying to talk up Veerasamy Permaul for a while, seeing what he's going to be. He's got a couple of wickets, so that's good for him. But yes, Shane Shillingford is the standout bowler for the West Indies. He's taken a 5-wicket haul. And like you said, Sanjay, took some time between 4 and 5. We'll show you all the exact details in a minute. But credit to Shillingford, even though it took him such a long time. Ashwin and Rohit Sharma had played him so very comfortably. You've got to give it to him that he kept persisting, kept persevering. Good reward for his efforts.
Yes, and when the batsman played him well, that's the only time he looked easy to bat again. So if anyone has a problem with off spin or the dusra, then Shillingford is a bowler that you better watch out for. Because a lot of people talking about his bowling actions and things like that. I think maybe later on in the show we'll talk about this aspect of the game where when you look at a certain bowler and the bowling action looks a bit dubious. But this is of course for later. For the moment you can just compliment him because it's not a freakish performance. He's done this before. He's got 10 wickets against Australia.
Absolutely, like Sanjay said, good performance by Shane Shillingford. Let's take a look at what India have finally got in their first innings in this first test match at the Eden Gardens. They've ended up with 453. A lead of 219. We'll show you the score in just a moment. But it was, there you go. Rohit Sharma, the big figure there, 177 before he was adjudged leg before wicket of the bowling of Permaul to give Permaul his first wicket. And this, we're going to talk about that wicket, Sanjay, just after we see the numbers. Lovely work by Ravichandran Ashwin as well. 124. He's just impressing more and more, isn't he?
Yes, this is second 100, and every time he goes into bat, he looks like a proper batsman. And sometimes people compare him with the way VVS Lakshman bats at the crease, so that's tremendous compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. The West Indies bowling is, as far as it's concerned, the standout bowler, like I've mentioned before, was Shane Shillingford. Picked up 5 wickets, and something that he'd take back well from his first memories of the Eden Gardens. But let's continue just talking a little more about the West Indian spinners, Sanjay. We saw Permaul pick up a few wickets and Shillingford. It's an interesting transition, like you said, with the West Indian spinners, and they went into this game with those 2 spinners. The only time the spinners were ineffective were when Rohit Sharma and Ashwin were playing them well. So can we give them credit to say that they didn't even bowl badly during that phase, or is it a case that they could have done something more?
No, I think they tried everything that they could, and you could see that Shillingford can bowl long spells as well. He's not a guy who's going to be effective for 10 overs and then suddenly he loses a bit of sting. I like Permaul as well. He's a bit like Ravindra Jadeja, quick flat trajectory and bowls in one direction. Some balls turn, some don't. Rohit Sharma was flummoxed by one delivery which he thought I'll leave and play. So yes, impressive spinner that they can count on turning pitches in the subcontinent.
It's a good time to show that delivery. That's, as Sanjay points out, flummoxed Rohit Sharma. Veerasamy Permaul to Sharma. This is the wicket ball. Yes, and of course this is the Hawkeye that we're showing you, but we must clarify that it's only an approximation. So you can take a look. He didn't offer a shot, Rohit Sharma, for those who didn't really get to catch the action live. He didn't offer a shot, padded to it. Richard Kettleborough thought for a while and eventually gave it out. Sanjay, your immediate reaction, when you saw it live and then you saw it on the replay, you can understand why the umpire's given it out?
When you do a lot of television, you watch a lot of television, you do commentary, you start understanding these things slightly better. It's not, whether you're gifted to watch such things. So what I do as a rule, and when it happened actually, is, you put a dot in your mind where the ball pitches and when it hits the pad. And then you draw a line and find where that is going. Now with that delivery that got Rohit Sharma on 177, that Permaul delivery pitched on off stump and then hit him on the pad slightly outside the off stump. So you can imagine where it's going. It's going to miss the off stump. But I like the way umpires react when an appeal comes. Even if they make a mistake, you've got to, we talked about a bad mistake yesterday from Nigel Long. Today, it wasn't a bad mistake because Kettleborough thought for a while. In his head, he's going, is it hitting? Is it not anything? It's more out than not out. And I can't possibly give this not out. And then the finger came up. Another thing you've got to always take into account when you're watching things on television is where is our camera placed in television? It's right over the side screen. We try and get it as accurately as possible, but the umpire has the best angle. He's watching it on level terms with the batsman. So Kettleborough is looking at it. He knows it's a bit close, but in his head, he thinks it's more out than not out. So I'll put that as a mistake, but not a bad one.
Not a bad one, yeah. And the other interesting thing that came from that wicket was the reaction of Rohit Sharma. Now he stood there for ages, almost as long as he's had the time to play the shots that he's played in this fantastic innings of 177. But he got given out. He kept looking where the ball pitch, where it's hitting, then looked at the umpire, eventually went off. If we can quickly just have a quick word on this in contrast to Tendulkar's dismissal, which was far more glaring in replay and reaction, and he walked off immediately. Tells you something about the generations, the different types of batsmen from these two generations?
No, there were some guys during our times as well who would take a long time to get away, and there were gestures made as well. Two things I'll say about Rohit Sharma's reaction. One is I liked it for somebody who was batting on 177. He was very, very hurt and upset that he was out, which is a great sign. And the way he was batting, could see that he had his eyes set on a big one. 200 was there for the taking. So that's a great sign to see a batsman getting his first 100 and being so disappointed on 177. So that's a good sign. But yes, I think he lingered a bit too long. And the match referee might just have a look at it and might say, young guy
maybe
playing his
just
first test match, let it go. But he was there for a while.
That upset and hurt when it stays for that long could become dissent in the eyes of the laws, and that's when the match referee, probably like Sanjay said, because it's his first game, maybe just have a word, or let's see how it goes. But that's the major story as far as it goes. Rohit Sharma missing out on a double 100, but there was another man who got 100, and it was his second 100, second against the West Indies even, and that was Ravichandran Ashwin. I think he's going to give us case to talk about his batting a lot more than his bowling, especially when he's playing in India. Is he impressing even more and opening a few? I know we're getting a lot of thoughts on where Ashwin could fit in this lineup to add balance to it. But is he just comfortable in subcontinental conditions, or is it we shouldn't get too carried away?
We've got plenty of numbers on Ashwin which will show in due course of time. But the fact of the matter is that he comes in with a great deal of confidence. I said this yesterday as well. He is a purist in his heart. He made his name in T20 cricket, 50 overs cricket. But in his head, he's still a guy who is very much an old-fashioned cricketer who values Test match cricket. His game also more suited for Test match cricket, and I dare say his batting seems more suited to Test match cricket than his bowling. But a guy who takes pride in Test performances, and somebody who believes that when it comes to 50 overs cricket, T20 cricket, there are other guys who will get some attention. They're the tonkers, run hard between the wicket. But here, when it comes to skill, temperament, and balance, and all those little things of batsmanship, he knows he's got it all. So that sense of self-confidence comes through, and brilliant record for somebody who's primarily there in the team as an off-spinner. Primarily
in the team as an off-spinner, but we've got to see how he's batted and where he scored his runs, because like Sanjay said, very good technique, good application, and enjoys playing Test cricket, and you can see in the way he's played his shots as well. It's not, it's by no means a tail-ender's innings where he's just played behind or it's gone through the slips and gone to third man. What does this tell you, Sanjay, about the way he approaches his innings and where he plays his shot? A lot of runs square on either side of the wicket.
Very much an Ashwin wagon wheel. You'll see the white streaks. We've got those down as sixes, but maybe
that's fours. We've got sixes twice there. That's a little glitch, but that's so all right.
That's where he hits his boundaries. It's sort of drives on the offside, square on the offside, flicks through mid-wicket. The only things that I didn't like are those purple little things going on the offside. You see, very sort of fine angle there where he tried a few reverse sweeps. Didn't quite look Ashwin-like shots.
Absolutely, and you'll notice one more thing, and you might notice this regularly with Ravichandran Ashwin. There are no threes over there. He's not much of a runner. Very few twos also. Very few twos also.
Threes,
absolutely, very few twos. In fact, he was on 98 when he hit a nice little shot on the leg side, just work Chillingford away. Could have taken two, but Ashwin just told himself, let's hold on to this for a little longer. But yeah, it's a happy-looking Ashwin in that picture. Now, how he played at each bowler is something that we can also look at, because being an off spinner, obviously, I think this is the notion in cricket. They don't like getting out to their own kind. So if you take a look at how Ashwin's played, he scored a lot of runs against Shillingford, 41. He's also played a lot of balls against Shillingford, in fairness, but comfortable against pace as well. Sanjay, he scored well against Beston Cottrell too.
Yeah, I think it's comfortable against pace. The only weakness that I've seen on occasions is when fast bowlers, bowl to him in the ribs, because he's not quite a puller of the ball. Sometimes tries to ride the bounce and play it down. But I don't think you can call that a weakness against pace. I think he's a guy who is quite at home against pace, and you've seen against spin. I mean, Rohit Sharma and Ashwin gave an education to batsmen on how to play spinners on a pitch that has a bit of turn.
Somebody who's got good technique, you mentioned doesn't like the ball short, but for a tall person, can he develop a technique to play short pitch bowling? Could do him a lot of help in places like South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, for a tall guy, it's about, whether he wants to look at it aggressively or defensively. Sunil Gavaskar, right through his career, except that 100 when he got at Firozshah Kotla against West Indies, looked at the short ball in a defensive fashion. He would leave, duck, and that was just great to watch. Some batsmen look at it aggressively, so he's got to decide in his mind whether he's going to look at it attackingly or look at it as a ball to just let go and worry about the balls that are pitched forward. And I think he can manage that. He's very strong in his mind and decent technique as well. Yeah,
decent technique and applied well against Shane Shillingford in particular. Like I said, there's that notion you don't like getting out to your own kind. If you look at how he's played Shillingford, Sanjay, you'll see predominantly leg side-ish, scoring of runs, which tells you he played pretty well off the back foot and worked Shillingford away. Is he good at reading, what he's good at, what he's good at bowling as well? Does everyone have that quality, or does it take some skill?
See, what you see from the wagon wheel is when Shillingford is bowling at you, the most difficult shot to play is the cover drive. So you haven't seen too many of those. There are just little dabs on the offside. And lots of runs on the leg side played with the spin. If there is a dusra, they've just worked it around the third man area. So very sort of nice way to get runs. This is more a collection of runs rather than really, battering the bowler. So lots to like about every facet of that innings of Ashwin.
Yeah, absolutely. Good innings. Good to watch as well was Ravichandran Ashwin. And he's piling up some numbers. He's keeping those who are interested in numbers very active on their feet and on their hands. And Rajesh has also been very active, giving all the numbers that Ashwin's conjuring up, because he's impressed so much at number 8 in particular, has Ravichandran Ashwin. If you take a look at the average, he now has the highest batting average for a player batting at number 8, of course, minimum being 600 runs. So, and he's got he's got a number of people on that list, Sanjay, who've played those match-saving, match-winning innings, likes of Mark Boucher, Kapil Dev is there. It's a good achievement for Ashwin to have early in his career.
Yes, and we've taken a minimum of 600 runs as a qualification. Whether he'll be able to sustain this kind of performance, time will tell. But currently at this stage, you can see that his performance at that position has been exceptional. I mean, 40 is an average for proper batsmen. There are a lot of English batting greats who average in the 40 and 42, but we won't get there because these are still early days. But that gives you an indication of his success so far at that number 8 position in Test match cricket, which is incredible.
Now, the other thing is to see the other names on that list, and you saw the likes of Kapil Dev, Chris Keynes, Sean Pollock.
But these are long careers, so you've got to take that into account.
But what they tell you is these were the all-rounders. These are the ones you genuinely classify as the all-rounders. We've been getting a lot of reaction and questions saying, is Ashwin now the genuine Indian all-rounder? Is he somebody who India can consider ever playing at 7 in order to play 5 bowlers, depending on conditions and where they're playing? Would you advocate that idea? Would you see it happening in the near future?
One of the things I would do as coach or captain with this kind of a performance from Ashwin is when he comes back into the dressing room, I'll say, okay, well played. And not, say too much about his batting. Because he's in the team as an off-spinner. And Dhoni and Fletcher need him more to get wickets. They want him in the second innings to get 6 wickets and roll West Indies out quickly. Sometimes it's happened in the past. Won't happen with Ashwin. He's too smart for that. It's happened in the past where a bowler has become a batsman because he found that easier and people felt, oh, what a wonderful cricketer we've got, and started focusing more on batting. May not happen with Ashwin because he'll know that he has to be a good off-spinner to be in the team, but can become an all-rounder, potential all-rounder. A lot of people wondering whether he can bat at number 7 now. Now South Africa, is the next challenge for India. Can he bat at number 7 in South Africa? When I look at Ashwin and his batting success, you also look at the team composition. And if you get a sort of standard pitch in South Africa, I don't see India going with 5 bowlers. They'll either go with 3 seamers, 1 spinner, or 2 seamers and 2 spinners. So Ashwin will continue to perhaps bat at number 8 unless India decides to go with 5 bowlers, which is quite rare. They don't do that very often.
But a prospect, even outside subcontinental conditions, will he have the technique and application in a South Africa or in a New Zealand to convince selectors or his captain that he's good enough at 7?
He hasn't played outside India as much.
Exactly.
I think he may have had 4 or 5 innings in Australia.
Yeah.
But he didn't look like fish out of water.
Correct.
He didn't look like an Asian batsman struggling on bouncy pitches. Because I think he got a 60 somewhere, he's got a 30.
He keeps giving in, he keeps giving runs at that position. So, and especially when you're coming in with the top order going, which I think is the second time, this is when Ashwin's got hundreds in both cases. What does that tell you mentally about a lower order batsman? If he is, for all practical purposes, a lower order batsman, what does that tell you mentally about how strong he is, that even when the team's out, he can still back himself to get runs?
He's a very intelligent person, and that's why very often he's the spokesperson of the Indian cricket team. And somebody who's got great self-belief. I think he has more self-belief in him as a cricketer, both batsman and bowler, when he's playing Test cricket than 50 overs and T20 cricket. And on that tour of Australia, batting was struggling. India was just struggling to get 300 runs on the board.
Correct.
And this guy, because he didn't bowl well, didn't play all the Test matches, but every time he came out to bat, he showed some of the other top-order batsmen who were out of form that this is how you bat in these conditions. So clearly not a batsman who only revels in Asian conditions.
Yeah, he talks about that innings in Australia. There's Sanjay Manjrekar, and that's what we're trying to establish, that when he did bat in Australia as well, he got runs away from home. That's the big question mark, whether Ashwin can get runs outside of the subcontinent. 32 and a half at batting in 6 innings in Australia. that next line is the USB of that slide. Next only to Kohli and Tendulkar, 31, 30, 20, 62, 5, 15. I think that sums up how poor the batting in India was, more than credit to Ashwin. But again, like we said, we've established mentally a strong cricketer.
You know what that tells you? You have to get starts in Australia. I mean, all the Indian batsmen struggled to get going.
Yeah.
They just couldn't get to 15, 20. And here's a guy who went in every time, got to 30 and wasn't able to get the big score.
Correct.
And you're quite right. That actually is more reflection of the Indian batting form was. And what was remarkable on that trip was how Indian selectors were stubborn in not trying to change the batting order, despite those collapses, repeated collapses. Nothing changed. So there was that Rahane, Rohit Sharma waiting in the reserves, waiting for an opportunity that never came, despite persistent batting failures.
I always like to put this. If you just move to a different aspect now, but we'll keep with Ashwin for just a little longer before we talk about the West Indian batting. And when we did the huddles on the IPL, and there was one particular game with Sunrisers Hyderabad when Ashish Reddy had a good innings, with the bat, and then can't remember who the opposition was. Is that over? He bowled MS Dhoni, so it was the CSK game, and Reddy bowled the last over with about 15 or so to get, and just lost the game. And the reaction of Tom Moody was that, we thought he batted well, so he can take that momentum into his bowling. I know Jared Kimber feels very strongly about this point on how you can translate momentum from one part of your skill to another. But I'd still like to know, if you go back, as a number 8, having scored 100, having been part of these statistics and numbers, having put up a big partnership, would that somewhere lift you up when you take the ball, or are those two different things which we shouldn't confuse?
I think there is a little connection.
Okay.
If you're bowling well and if you had this kind of a batting day, then you just come feeling a lot better. But if your confidence is really down as a bowler, then 100 is not going to save you. So makes a marginal difference. I wouldn't say that it has a direct impact, but I will also not rule that out. You just feel that you've added some value to the team already, so the pressure to add value as a bowler is lessened, but the expectation should be there. This is where, it's critical how the team management handles somebody like Ashwin. So he's got to be told, well done, Ashwin, but, put pressure on him for his bowling, which is going to come next. So just say, well played, but show him that his main job is still left.
Yep, absolutely. It reminds you of the Ashton Agar incident. At the end, he's scoring 98 at 11, but didn't take a wicket in the Ashes. His ideal job is to get wickets, so that's what Ashwin needs to focus on as well. Let's move a little to the West Indian batting now, because that's what we're going to see. And this game, at least the duration of this game, Sanjay, will pretty much be decided with how long the West Indies bat. If they crumble today, day 5 seems like an easy day for at least the two of us, along with everyone else working in production. But you said it on almost every edition that we've had when we've spoken about the West Indies batting. Chris Gayle, Now he's the single, that one factor, almost that entity on his own in the batting of the West Indies that can make a difference. We're going to show you a very interesting stat on Chris Gayle.
So ominous with that particular angle.
I'm glad we're only looking at him from a monitor.
Where was the photographer when he was taking this?
At normal height. At normal height. You think at absolutely normal height, and Chris Gayle looked at him and.
There is a theory amongst Indian fans. They think Chris Gayle is more dangerous at 9 p.m. rather than 9 a.m. But that's not true, because we've got some excellent numbers to. Why I bring Chris Gayle into the equation is I fear people who get triple hundreds.
Yeah.
They may not be the most consistent batsmen, but once they get going, they get the big scores. And this is a guy who's got 2 triple hundreds against 2 proper oppositions. One against Sri Lanka, in Sri Lanka, and the other time was, I think, against.
Can't recall the second one.
South Africa.
Okay.
I think it was in West Indies. So 2 triple hundreds. And every time he gets 100, he gets a big one. And that's completely contrary to the T20 batsman that we see with Chris Gayle. So that is my worry. If he gets going, and then you can't set a field. Because the restriction that a captain has when he's setting the field is that he's got to keep the field inside the ground. You're not allowed to have people on the roof and have him caught or in the tiers of the stand. So that's the danger that he brings.
Yeah, sometimes even in the parking lot. But let's just try and put in perspective what Sanjay is talking about with regard to Chris Gayle, the big hundreds. And the numbers that we're going to show you is how a player does when he's scored his 100, and shows the nature of how big those 100.
No, I think this is more consistency.
Oh yeah,
Ronak.
Yeah.
And we've got a simple formula here. What we're looking at is, when a batsman goes into bat and goes past 40, as a batsman, I always felt that when you went past 40, that you've contributed. It's not a failure. So we've used a very simple formula, and this is very interesting. So this brings out the consistency as to how many times batsmen, when they go in, go past 40,
and then convert.
Heading the list there, Kumar Sangakkara. But Chris Gayle is the man in focus. He's 36.8%. So you can see on the consistency front, he's quite low. But some of the other guys who are top order batsmen, you can see why. In fact, Brian Lara, there is a surprise, because we associate Lara again like Chris Gayle, that is not the most consistent, but he's right there, number 2 on the consistency chart.
Yeah, I tend to disagree a little on that notion, because I've had a talk with Jeffrey Boycott on it as well, and he was venturing out his frustration on Shane Watson, who's similar. He'll keep getting 30s, 40s, but he says he'd rather go with Shane Watson, get a series of poor scores, but get a big 100 every time. But you've got to have a lot of patience, not only with the crowd, with your own players, with your captain, your selectors. Is it harder for that kind of batsman to, or do the people know, okay, this man is skilled, like a Sehwag, he'll come out? Does he really tests the patience of everyone else in and around him, doesn't he?
Especially, people who believe in you, who think, you can do better. I mean, I've come from a place, Mumbai, where they just had no time for the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
And there were these coaches that used to, keep reminding us. There was this one guy who would say, Sanjay, you're getting a lot of 30, 40. I'm not the believe in the 30 and the 40. I'm the believe in the 100. So those were the kind of guys that we had. But yes, interesting that Chris Gayle on the consistency factor is not great. But you were talking about the other the stat that we have about the big 100,
correct,
which is where Chris Gayle brings in.
And we've got that stat now. Yes, this is the one that I was talking about in the beginning, on how a batsman averages after he scored 100, basically reflecting the size of those hundreds. And you can see the company that Mr. Gayle enjoys. Sehwag and Lara right at the top. You've got the likes of Jayasuriya, Sangakkara,
Jayasuriya to be there.
Yeah, that was a surprise, wasn't it? What was the biggest factor with Jayasuriya in Test batting? Very few people remember.
Again, triple hundreds does help your cause. Sehwag has got 2. Gayle has got 2, Lara has got.
What, I want to just ask you one thing. Jayasuriya, Sangakkara, Attapattu, Jayawardene, what is this thing with Sri Lankans and getting massive hundreds? We as Indian, watchers of Indian cricket know how painful it was. They're like the Chandrapals in that list too.
How many are there? There's 1, 2, 3,
We've
4
got
in the
4
top
Sri
7,
Lankans.
I think.
Wow, what does that tell you? Is it just Sri Lankan pitches?
No, it tells you about the temperament.
Yeah.
It tells you, when you go to Sri Lanka, you meet these people who are never too hassled. They're very patient. They're unlike Indians in a rush. They're not in a rush.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, don't forget the humidity factor, the heat factor in Sri Lanka. It's incredible to play those kind of long innings in that kind of a heat. If you're at the Premadasa and all, I think Sana Jayasuriya got a triple 100 maybe at that ground. It is sapping. So it's just credit to one, their fitness. They're very fit people. You see that, and of course this calm mind that just wants to go on and on. Marwan Attapattu is another guy who's got 5 or 6 double hundreds. So yeah, nice list there, and that's why the Gale factor is something that you've got to.
I'd love to filter that stat and see how many of those big hundreds were against India, because you'll find a lot of those big scores did come against India.
The Sri Lanka.
Yep, the Sri Lankans. You can remember going to Galle and going to the Premadasa and just looking at Jayawardene bat anytime you put the TV on, and it was always live. So Jayawardene just never got out at times. Let's move to the innings itself and where we stand at the match, Sanjay. We spoke a little in the morning when Shillingford was bowling in the morning session of how the pitch was giving him some assistance. Ashwin's going to be bowling now pretty soon. He came on the 10th over in the first innings. Does this pitch continue to assist the spinner? Is it a third day thing? Is it a morning thing? How does it change for the bowlers?
We saw, we were watching the match together on TV, and we saw that Shillingford was getting bite in the morning.
Yeah.
And against said batsman who played him so well yesterday. So that showed that in the morning there is a bit of extra spice in the pitch, and that comes because of the moisture.
Okay.
The soil just gets itself bound a little more. It's not seen sun for a while, so that allows the ball to grip a little more. There is more sort of response from the pitch. Once the sun comes down, it tends to get a little dusty. So I don't think in India the cracks are such an issue. You never see the cracks opening up big time like they do in Australia, South Africa. So yes, afternoon and evening it will tend to get a bit slower. But the fact of the matter is, if you've got new batsmen in, they'll be in trouble. Once the batsmen are set, I think there are still plenty of runs left in this pitch.
Yep, still plenty of runs. Yeah, this pitch is played pretty well throughout the course of the game by and large. But that's the talk about the match. That's the talk about Ashwin, the talk about big hundreds and big people like Chris Gayle, as we saw in that picture, that poor little photographer. I'm sure the photographer was about 6 feet. Gayle was powering him, like a colossus. But yeah, let's get you involved, all of you involved, and you've been sending in your questions at length here in Matchpoint, and continue doing so with hashtag Matchpoint. Sanjay Manjrekar and me, the minute we're done from here, we're only trying to see what questions we can answer. Let's take some questions at this point in the show. If we can get the first one. Yeah, Dilip Sinha. Why does India always struggle on the first match of a series? Keeping aside the score at the end of the day, 89 for 5 is ridiculously poor for a batting lineup like India's. I think Dilip has a firm opinion on this, but he's got a point. What's this thing with India starting slow in a series, Sanjay?
I just wonder whether it's going to be a trend that we'll see with more and more teams. With the international cricket being packed in the way it's done, the first casualty are the warm-up games.
Yeah.
So when you have a full-fledged tour as well, you play 1 or 2 at the most.
Correct.
When we used to go and time before us, there would be 4 or 5 warm-up matches. So, all the mistakes that you made in new conditions or, just starting a new format were made in the warm-up matches. Now those mistakes tend to happen in the first test match. Take India, for example.
Yeah.
What was their preparation coming into the test series was 7 one-days on flat pitches. It's amazing that they make that transition so quickly. And a lot of batsmen weren't out because of one-day cricket. I think they just got out playing properly. But the mistakes that tend to happen in the first-class games, if India would have, as a team, played 2 or 3 warm matches, it doesn't happen at home. But, a few first-class matches elsewhere, those mistakes, as I said, would have happened in the warm-up games. So maybe this is a trend that you will see international teams making a few mistakes in the first match and then recovering slowly, learning from those lessons into the second and third test match. That's why I feel 2 test matches is useless in this day, and because the fans get deprived.
Yeah.
Because the first test match is sort of spent in a visiting team trying to get acclimatized. By the time they're in the groove to do something, the series is over.
Yeah, before we get to that next question, because it's an interesting point you raised about the warm-up games and how they're becoming a casualty, but that we can probably look around world cricket at the moment and see that with particular reference only to India perhaps, because you see England going to Australia now for the Ashes, and they're already in Australia. They've got 2 warm-up games for the first test. They've then got a warm-up game in the middle of the Ashes as well after 2 tests. So the teams that are doing well in test cricket, and England is considered to be one, even though India might just go above them at the end of this series, they perform consistently in different conditions. So warm-up games are still crucial, especially overseas, aren't they?
Absolutely, I mean, they are crucial. But what's happened in the last 4-5 years, India was number 1 test team in the world before the debacle happened in England and Australia. And they weren't playing too many warm-up matches and still doing well.
Yeah.
And we had Sehwag, I think, on the Cricket Info show saying that warm-up matches are a waste of time. If I get 100 in the first match, all my good form is lost there and I might have nothing left. So he had the simple theory. But he found out, very cruelly, that yes, warm-up games are important, because if you remember when he came into that England series in England, I think Oval was the first match that he played, or somewhere before that. He came without any match practice, and I think his career took a downward slide after that. So yes, warm-up matches are crucial, but I think modern-day batsmen travel a lot more than they used to. So they might get used to new conditions a bit quicker than we used to. For example, I mean, for us, going to West Indies was one in 5 or 6 years and things like that. Now West Indian players come to India, twice a year.
Yeah, that's how it is. They're here right now as well in India. Let's take the next question. Thank you for your question, Dilip. The second question here on the lunchtime show on Match Point. With the South Africa and New Zealand tours ahead, how should India be managing their fast bowling combination? Now, I'm sure this would have come up at some point. Do you think Zaheer deserves another shot? Also, how would you manage Ishant Sharma? Now, that one from Pradeep Ramani. Zaheer and Ishant, how does India manage the pace bowling combination, Sanjay?
It's very interesting how, the scenario in Indian cricket is changing. There are plenty of seam options, Ronak. I believe last Ranji Trophy season, out of the top 10 wicket takers, 6 or 7 were seam bowlers.
Yep.
So, things are drastically changing in India. So, Zaheer, Ishant Sharma have competition. We've already seen Mohammad Shami establish himself. Umesh Yadav is somebody who will constantly be in the plan. Bhuvaneshwar Kumar is almost an established bowler. So, my feeling with Zaheer Khan is he played one match that we recently saw on television. He's got to keep playing and show that he's match fit, and there has to be performance. You can't just pick people because of their past performance. It's like picking a batsman. When I was making a comeback, I couldn't be picked after just getting 30s and 40s. I had to show my batting performance again, like Suresh Raina is doing. They're all staking a claim with runs at the domestic level. Ishant Sharma, Zaheer Khan have to do the same. Ishant Sharma has to go back to first class cricket and come back on the claims of wickets, because that's how the others have come in.
Yeah. Is it sometimes harder as a bowler to make that comeback? Takes a lot more out of you with age physically?
Yes, I think both for spinners and seamers, Indian international seamers and spinners going back to Ranji Trophy cricket and putting in those performances is not easy.
Yeah.
And I found international spinners actually finding batting challenges at the domestic level far more difficult to handle, because domestic players were such good players of spin. So yes, it's the tougher road, and batsmen, I think it's a far more easy path back in.
Yeah, but that no discredit from Sanjay Manjrekar, who did choose to become a batsman in his time. So we're almost running out of time before the second session on day 3 begins. So let's show you where the match stands after lunch, or at lunch rather. India 453 all out. Rohit Sharma with 177. Ravichandran Ashwin with excellent assistance at 124. He stacked up the numbers in his favour as Ashwin. Shane Shillingford, you've got to give it up to him. 6 for 167. Took the top order out yesterday and has ended up with a 6 for in his first visit to the Eden Gardens. Marlon Samuels was the only note of any reckoning in the West Indies innings when they were bundled out for 234 after they won the toss yesterday. And you know what, in this final series, somehow Sachin Tendulkar manages to stay on the match summary with 1 for 5 when he dismissed.
He actually
Shane
managed
Shillingford.
to get headlines on both days. The first day it was for his wicket with his leg spinners, and yesterday was Rohit Sharma getting 100 on a day that Tendulkar's farewell test.
Correct.
So somehow
Correct.
he's managed to still remain in the headlines.
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely has remained in the headlines. So we're almost set for live action at the Eden Gardens. So thank you very much for joining us. A big thank you to Sanjay, and we're going to keep Sanjay with us. He's not going anywhere. We're going to be back, and we're going to get you something special at tea. Let's hope we can put that together and give it to you. Until then, thank you for watching Match Point. Bye-bye.